Realme just launched this here in Europe. It is the X3 SuperZoom, and it has a 5x periscope camera. You can take photos with a hybrid zoom, 10x hybrid zoom, and right up to 60x if you wanted to with this periscope camera. We also have a 64 megapixel main camera. This is the Samsung ISO Cell GW1, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel macro camera, and for selfie cameras we've got a 32 megapixel front facing selfie accompanied by a 8 megapixel ultra wide as well for selfie shots, just to get more in the shot. So in this video I'm going to go over the capabilities of these cameras. We'll take a look in depth of what we can do with this phone here. I'll show you the stock camera application as well and just how the zoom camera works and what we can expect, of course, quality wise, not just stills but also video. So if you are new to my channel or a frequent viewer and you haven't done so already, please subscribe. Check the bell icon to enable notifications. This way you don't miss out on any new videos from me. So I'll quickly run you through the camera, what we can do with it. So this is our ultra wide tapping right here. So this is 8 megapixels. This is the main sensor 1x, which is that Samsung ISO Cell. It is the GW1. So it's a first generation and it has an aperture of f1.8. Now, if I tap to 2x, that's 2x digital. We have 5x now optical. Tapping here then gives me 10x. So 10x I feel is still actually usable. Now, if you tap and then hold, you can then scale up or down, but I'm going to scale up now to about 20% zoom. It's a little hard to get it actually spot on, but it doesn't really matter now. This, as you can see, is not so good, the quality. So take a photo there. It's looking a little bit too pixelated, not really usable. And you can go all the way, right up to 60x. And this really, look at that quality. Not usable at all, of course. It's just so pixelated. So, video modes, we've got the same options here. Now, if you tap for video to go to the 5x, it's actually just the main sensor cropping in, right up to 10x there as well. So sadly, it doesn't use that 8 megapixel 2x optical periscope camera. Night modes. So with the night mode, we've got a tripod option, which is currently enabled. It's down in the left bottom hand corner here. Tapping that gives us a 50-second shutter time, which is very long exposure. And then right up the top here, we've got portrait, 64 megapixel mode. And under more, we've got expert. So expert, ISO up to 3200, shutter rate up to 32 seconds, white balance, autofocus. Also got an option with a main camera for RAW, and you can change by tapping here to the ultra wide, the 5x optical, or the main camera. So let's have a look at some samples now. This is the 32 megapixel front facing camera. So this one does have electronic image stabilization, which is great. And yes, I am wearing a mask right here, and that's because from tomorrow it is actually law here in Spain. But I've been wearing them the whole time I go out in public, of course. So stay safe, people. And we also do get ultra wide with the 8 megapixel camera, but the quality is not as good as you can see, not as sharp. 4K, 30 frames per second sample. Panning around, we do get a little bit of judder. It's quite common with electronic image stabilization. It is nice and steady. Just going to walk ahead now to show you the electronic image stabilization working. So there is no optical image stabilization on the main 64 megapixel GW1 sensor. If I run now, you can see that the stabilization is still working well, but it's not the smoothest I have seen. Audio bitrate is 320 kilobits per second. Good audio, but is susceptible to a little bit of wind noise. Now the ultra wide quality, 8 megapixels, 1080p maximum. It doesn't let you shoot in 4K, 30 frames per second like the sample I showed you before. It tends to overexpose. I mean, look at those boats there, just a little too white, a bit blowing out. Now this is actually the ultra steady mode max, which is using the ultra wide. So I'll run down these steps here just to show you how steady it is, what you can expect. It's a little bit more steady than just the main sensor with its electronic image stabilization. Now the street lights here in Europe, in Spain at least where I am, they are normally yellow down that street, so it should look yellow. We'll have a look at the electronic image stabilization too, just walk forward a little. So let's talk a little bit about what we saw there with the camera. So the periscope camera 5x optical means we get just so much closer and so much more detail versus digital. Digital 5x would look terrible, but at 5x optical, we can really see that it still captures a lot of detail. 5x, which is now hybrid, so that's 5x digital, 5x optical, still is usable to me, but going over that is when we start to get a bit borderline. Even 20% may be okay for some people, but 60% of course, no, not really. That's not a usable image for me there. Now the main sensor I think does capture a very detailed image. Sometimes the white balance I've noticed is a little bit off. I feel that there's a bit of optimization still needed on Realme's part there, especially with the ultra-wide cameras in video. Video performance with the ultra-wide is not so great. The exposure can sometimes shift out. You have blown out backgrounds, or at least, okay, my face might be exposed okay, but you will find that if you're in a bright environment, that the background will be just completely blown out there. So there's a little bit of tweaking there. Now the portrait modes, I found that the stitching normally is pretty good on this one. So very good. Normally with the front-facing camera, it will stitch around. Now I do have a camera comparison if you're interested to see this particular model up against the Redmi K30 Pro Zoom. Another Zoom Chinese smartphone, that's another flagship. And you'll see that the stitching is actually, I think, a little bit better on this particular model versus that one there. Now video quality, stability, is good, but it is certainly not the best electronic image stabilization I have seen. Now I did say that in one of the clips I think that the video quality looked a little bit soft, the 4K, but actually it's not compared to others because I started doing these comparisons and I've noticed it is actually a little bit sharper, their 4K video, probably because their crop isn't so aggressive, or the electronic image stabilization is why we get a little bit more sharpness there. Now if you take it really easy, you pan around really nice and slow, hold it two-handed, not just one-hand style, but two-handed, you can get some excellent results with the 4K video. And the bitrate is very good on 4K, and audio bitrate too as well, 320 kilobits per second normally, or 319, around that. And the microphones on here do offer rich sound. They're quality mics, which is another good thing there too. So with the front-facing cameras, with that ultra-wide on there, the 8 megapixels, it does come at the cost, of course, of having the wider cutout, a pill-shaped cutout, but you can fit a lot more in. It really depends on what you're after in a phone. If you want to take a lot of photos with groups of people, that then is ideal. But as mentioned, the quality is not going to be good as the main 32 megapixel. So overall, this does pack, I think, quite a good set of cameras in here apart from the ultra-wide. So the 8 megapixel rear ultra-wide, that's its real weakness, I think. And the periscope camera, very handy to have, really good. We're seeing that in other flagships like the P30 Pro, P40, a lot of other phones now with 5x optical. So having it at this price point and in a phone like this, I think is excellent. So thank you for watching this camera review here of the Realme X3 Super Zoom. They do have a full in-depth review of this particular model. Make sure you check that and some other up-and-coming videos too. So do subscribe, and I hope to see you back in the next video. Bye for now.